That little street urchin saves a millionaire from a deadly epidemic. But moments later, something terrible happens. Comment and rate my story from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I count on your help. The scream sliced through the afternoon air like a sharp blade, echoing through the bustling streets of the big city. The 4-year-old street urchin, with a frail appearance that made her look only 2, ran desperately towards the widowed millionaire in his 30s, who was calmly walking down the sidewalk towards his luxury car. "No! Don't touch him!" the child screamed, her bare feet pounding against the hot asphalt, her dirty clothes fluttering as she threw herself between the well-dressed man and the sick boy waiting on a park bench. The successful businessman, owner of a thriving chain of upscale restaurants that had guaranteed him a considerable fortune through smart investments, stopped abruptly. His eyes, used to evaluating million-dollar deals and contracts involving large sums of dollars, now watched perplexed at this ragged child who dared to interfere in his personal affairs. "Get out of the way, kid," he said coldly, adjusting his expensive suit as he watched his 4-year-old adopted son cough weakly on the bench. The boy had developed what seemed like a simple flu, but it had left him prostrate for days. "I need to take my son to the doctor." The street urchin, whose big, frightened eyes contrasted with the determination in her voice, shook her head vigorously. "He's got the bad sickness. If you touch him, you'll get sick too, and you'll pass like the others." The millionaire frowned, annoyed by what he considered the ramblings of a malnourished street child. His life had been built on absolute control, every financial investment calculated, every asset assessed with precision, every decision made based on concrete data. He had no time for childish superstitions. "Don't be ridiculous," he replied, taking a step towards his son. "It's just the flu." But the girl stood firmly between them, her skinny arms outstretched as if she could physically stop a man 3 times her size. "Please, I know when someone has the bad sickness. I always know. The other street people, they looked like that first, then they vanished. I don't want you to vanish too." Something in the child's desperate sincerity made the businessman hesitate. Living on the streets for 2 years, after losing her parents in a tragic accident, the girl had developed an uncanny ability to observe patterns that others couldn't see. She had learned to survive not only by finding food and shelter, but by identifying dangers that others ignored. "You're talking nonsense," the millionaire muttered, but his hand stopped in midair as he was about to touch his son's shoulder. The child watched him with eyes that seemed too old for her age. "The smell is different, and his eyes have those little marks, like the others who vanished. If you touch him now, without gloves, without a mask, you'll catch it too." The businessman looked more closely at his adopted son. There really were small reddish spots around the boy's eyes, something he had attributed to fatigue from the illness. But now, observing more carefully, he noticed other signs. The slightly panting breath, a specific pallor in the skin, the cold sweat that was not typical of a common flu. "How could you possibly know something like that?" he asked, his voice losing some of its initial arrogance. The girl lowered her arms, but maintained her protective stance. "I can't explain it. I just know I can feel when someone has the bad sickness. It started when I was younger and saw people disappearing from where I slept. There was always a different smell first, then the little marks, then they went away and never came back." The millionaire felt a chill run down his spine. His wealth, his fortune carefully built through years of hard work and wise decisions in the financial market, none of that could protect him if the child was right. For a moment, all his security based on material goods and accumulated capital seemed fragile in the face of the possibility of a threat that money could not buy or control. "You live on the streets?" he asked, noticing for the first time the details of the girl's appearance, the tangled hair, the clothes that were too big for her small body, the dirty and bruised feet. I live back there. She pointed to a small alcove between two commercial buildings, near the district where his restaurants were located. Since Mommy and Daddy passed, I take care of myself. The businessman pulled his cell phone from his pocket and dialed quickly. Dr. Mendez, I need you to come urgently to Central Street Park. My son is sick and I need a second opinion. Yes, bring protective equipment. While they waited, the millionaire watched the girl with growing curiosity. She kept a respectful distance, but her eyes did not leave the boy on the bench, as if constantly monitoring his condition. "What's your name?" he asked, softening his tone. "People on the street call me many names," she replied evasively. "But it doesn't matter. The important thing is that you don't touch him until the doctor arrives with the special clothes." 20 minutes later, when the doctor arrived wearing full protective equipment and confirmed that the boy was infected with a rare and highly contagious strain of virus that could be fatal to adults, the millionaire felt the world spin around him. The dirty, ragged child had just saved his life. But when he turned to thank her, the girl had disappeared into the shadows of the buildings, leaving only the echo of her warning and a question that would not leave his head. How could a 4-year-old child know something that even doctors had not detected immediately? 2 weeks had passed since the encounter in the park, and the millionaire could not get the girl out of his thoughts. His adopted son was slowly recovering in the hospital, isolated in a special ward, while doctors studied the virus that had almost cost them both their lives. During the long hours of waiting in the hospital corridors, the businessman found himself looking out the window, searching for a small, fragile figure that could be anywhere in the city. The routine of visiting the hospital had become a daily ritual. Every morning, he left his luxurious apartment in downtown, drove to the private medical institution where his wealth guaranteed the best available treatment, and spent hours watching his son recover through a protective glass. But always, on the way home, he made a detour through the commercial district where his restaurants were located, specifically to the area where the girl had pointed out as her home. The alcove between the two commercial buildings was smaller than he had imagined, a narrow space where someone could protect themselves from the rain and wind. But that offered little comfort beyond that. Pieces of wet cardboard and a torn blanket indicated that someone really slept there, but the girl was never present when he passed by. During the 3rd week, while reviewing financial reports in his office on the top floor of a commercial building nearby, the millionaire noticed movement in the alcove through the window. It was her. The child had returned to her makeshift shelter, carrying a plastic bag that seemed to contain a few belongings. Without thinking twice, he went down to the street and walked towards the place. The girl saw him approaching and immediately tensed, like a wild animal ready to flee. "Wait," he said, stopping at a respectful distance. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just wanted to thank you for what you did." The child's eyes studied him carefully. "Is your boy better?" "He's recovering, thanks to you," the businessman replied, feeling a genuine gratitude that he rarely experienced. "The doctor said that if I had touched him that day, I probably would have contracted the virus too. You saved my life." The girl nodded, as if it were obvious. "I told you I could feel the bad sickness. You didn't believe it at first. And I was wrong," he admitted. "How did you develop this ability?" The child's expression became distant, as if she were remembering something painful. "When Mommy and Daddy passed, I stayed with people who didn't want me. Then they left me on the street. I had to learn quickly how to protect myself. I noticed that some people got sick in a different way, and then they disappeared. I learned to recognize the signs." The millionaire felt a pang in his chest. His own childhood had been difficult before he was adopted by a kind couple who gave him opportunities to build his financial empire. But he had never faced the complete abandonment that this child knew. "Are you hungry?" he asked, noticing how she held the bag tightly, protecting her few possessions. "Always," she replied with brutal simplicity. They walked to the nearest restaurant in his chain, where the businessman ordered a complete meal for the girl. As she ate with a desperate hunger that broke his heart, he watched how she chewed slowly, savoring each bite as if it might be her last. "Why did you help me that day?" he asked when she finished eating. The girl wiped her mouth with the sleeve of her dirty shirt. "Because you looked sad, like your boy. And sad people who lose family don't deserve to get sick too." The perspicacity of the observation surprised him. Somehow she had perceived the melancholy that he had carried since he lost his wife 5 years ago, a void that not all his financial success could fill. "Do you want to stay in a safer place?" he offered impulsively. "I can arrange a shelter, or—" "No," the answer was firm. "I don't accept charity. I can manage on my own." The pride in the child's voice made him reconsider his approach. What if it was a job? "You could watch my restaurants. Let me know if you notice anything strange." Her eyes sparkled with interest, but also with suspicion. "What kind of strange thing?" "Sick customers, employees who seem to be getting sick, anything that your special talent can detect," he explained. "It would be a real job with real pay." The girl considered the proposal for a long moment. "Would I stay outside?" "Wherever you feel comfortable. And I wouldn't need to live in a closed place." "No, if you don't want to." She extended her small, dirty hand. "Deal." When their hands met, the millionaire felt something he hadn't experienced in years: real purpose. All his accumulated capital, all his financial investments and dividends seemed insignificant compared to the responsibility he had just assumed. During the following days, the girl settled into a strange but effective routine. She circulated through the 5 restaurants in his chain, observing customers and employees with an attention that no one else possessed. Twice, she alerted him about employees who were beginning to show symptoms of the mysterious disease, allowing him to remove them before they infected others. But it was in the 4th week that the first real twist happened. The girl appeared in his office, climbing 20 floors up the emergency stairs to avoid the busy elevator, with a worried expression on her face. "There's a woman downstairs," she said, panting from the climb. "She says she's my aunt. She's asking to talk to you." The millionaire went down to the ground floor of the building, where he found a middle-aged woman, visibly drunk even though it was only midday, holding a bottle in a paper bag. "Are you the big shot hanging around with my niece?" the woman asked in a slurred voice. "I hope you know that kidnapping a minor is a serious crime." The businessman felt the blood run cold in his veins. All his fortune, built through years of honest work and smart investments, could collapse if legal charges arose. But something in the woman's posture, in the way she avoided looking directly at him, suggested that her intentions were not exactly noble. "What exactly is your relationship with the child?" he asked, keeping his voice controlled. "I'm her aunt, of course, the only family she has," the woman replied, taking a staggering step. "And unless you want trouble with the law, I suggest we start talking about compensation for the care I've been giving her." The millionaire looked out the ground floor window and saw the girl hidden behind a car, watching the scene with terror in her eyes. He had never seen so much fear on the child's face, not even when she warned him about his son's illness. At that moment, he realized that saving the girl from the streets would be only the beginning of a much more complex and dangerous battle than he had imagined. The confrontation with the alleged aunt extended for 2 tense hours in the lobby of the commercial building. The woman, who identified herself only as a responsible relative, demanded a significant monthly sum to keep silent about the irregular situation of the girl. The millionaire, accustomed to complex negotiations involving large sums in his investment portfolio, quickly realized that he was dealing with pure and simple blackmail. $10,000 a month, said the woman, her slurred voice revealing her constant state of drunkenness. It's not much for someone with as much wealth as you. Consider it a contribution to family well-being. During the negotiation, The businessman discreetly observed through the window and noticed that the girl had disappeared completely. His instinct told him that she was hiding, probably terrified by the appearance of this figure from the past that clearly represented trauma and fear. "I need time to consider your proposal," he said finally, buying time. "Come back next week and we'll talk." The woman laughed unpleasantly. "Time? You have until tomorrow, big shot. Otherwise, I'm going straight to the authorities to tell them how you're keeping an abandoned miner working for you. I imagine your business reputation wouldn't survive that scandal." After the departure of the blackmailer, the millionaire spent the rest of the day looking for the girl. He went to all the restaurants in his chain, checked the alcove where she used to sleep, and even hired 2 employees to help in the search. She had simply vanished, as if she had never existed. The next morning, while reviewing contracts in his office, trying to maintain the normalcy of his business routine, despite the constant worry, his adopted son was finally released from the hospital. The 4-year-old boy was still weak, but the doctors confirmed that the virus had been completely eliminated from his system. "Daddy," said the boy in his still, hoarse voice, "where's the girl who saved me? I wanted to thank her." The question hit the businessman like a punch in the stomach. How to explain to a child that the person who had saved both their lives was now running from someone who should be protecting her? "She's busy right now," he replied, carrying his son to the car, "but I'm sure we'll see her soon." During the drive home, while driving through the bustling streets of the city, the millionaire noticed something strange happening at one of his restaurants. An ambulance was parked in front of the establishment, and several employees were being examined by paramedics. He stopped the car and ran to the scene, leaving his son in the care of the chauffeur. The restaurant manager, visibly nervous, greeted him with disturbing news. "Sir, we had a serious problem. 3 kitchen staff members began to experience strange symptoms during the morning shift. High fever, skin spots, difficulty breathing. The paramedics suspect it's the same virus your son had." The businessman felt the world spin around him. Without the girl to alert him to the early signs of the disease, he was completely blind to the dangers that could devastate his business and put dozens of people at risk. "Close the restaurant immediately," he ordered, "and call the health department for a complete inspection." While coordinating the crisis, a small, familiar figure appeared in the crowd of onlookers that had formed on the sidewalk. The girl was there, watching the movement with that familiar expression of someone who recognized signs that others couldn't see. He ran to her, relieved and desperate at the same time. "Where were you? I've been looking for you all day." "Hiding," she replied simply. "That woman, she's not really my aunt." The revelation hit the millionaire like lightning. "What do you mean?" "My real aunt died when I was little. This woman appeared a few times when I was with other people on the streets. She does this with several abandoned children. She says she's a relative to get money from people who want to help." The relief was immediately followed by a new wave of concern. If the woman wasn't really related to the girl, that meant she was completely alone in the world, but also that the legal threats were unfounded. "Why didn't you tell me this yesterday?" he asked. "Because you were going to find out that I really have no one," the child replied, lowering her eyes. "And then you were going to feel sorry for me, and I don't want pity. I just want to work and take care of myself." At that moment, observing the determination and wounded pride of that 4-year-old child, the businessman understood something fundamental about his own life. For years, he had accumulated wealth and material goods as a way to protect himself from the pain and abandonment he had known in childhood. But here was a child facing unimaginable difficulties with a dignity that he himself had lost somewhere along the way. "Did you see the sick employees?" he asked, changing the subject to respect her discomfort. "I saw 3 of them arriving early today. The smell was different, and they had those little marks that I always recognize. I tried to go in to warn, but the security guard wouldn't let me." The millionaire cursed himself mentally. While he was worried about blackmail and bureaucracy, he had ignored the only person who could have avoided that crisis. "From now on, you have full access to all my restaurants," he said firmly, "and any employee who tries to stop you from warning me about something important will be fired on the spot." The girl looked at him in surprise. "Really? You trust me that much?" "I trust you more than any consultant or expert my money can buy," he replied with absolute sincerity. That afternoon, while dealing together with the crisis at the restaurant, father and adopted son got to know better the girl who had saved their lives. The boy, still weak but curious, asked dozens of questions about how she managed to detect diseases. The child answered patiently, explaining about subtle odors and changes in behavior that she had learned to recognize during her 2 years on the streets. "It's like people get a different shadow," she explained to the boy, using a language he could understand, "and I can always see that shadow before anyone else." "That's amazing," exclaimed the millionaire's son. "It's like having a superpower." The girl smiled for the first time since the businessman had met her. "I never thought of it that way. I always thought it was just something strange that I did." But the tranquility was short-lived. In the late afternoon, when they were preparing to end the day's activities, the fake aunt appeared again, this time accompanied by a man who identified himself as lawyer specializing in children's rights. "I see you're still maintaining irregular contact with the minor," said the woman with a malicious smile. "My legal representative here can explain the legal consequences of this situation." The businessman looked at the girl and saw the absolute terror stamped on her face. She hid behind him, trembling in a way that not even the hunger or cold of the streets had caused. At that moment, he realized that the real battle for the child's safety was just beginning, and that his fortune alone would not be enough to protect her from predators who took advantage of the vulnerability of abandoned children. The confrontation with the fake lawyer lasted only 15 minutes before the millionaire discovered the truth. The man was, in reality, an unemployed actor, hired to play a convincing role. When the businessman threatened to verify his credentials with the Bar Association, the imposter confessed everything and fled, leaving the blackmailer alone and exposed. "You'll regret this," the woman growled before leaving, but her threats now sounded empty and desperate. With the fake aunt finally gone, the millionaire could focus on what really mattered, understanding the mystery behind the girl's extraordinary ability. During the following weeks, he discreetly hired medical experts to examine her, always respecting her refusal to invasive procedures or hospitalizations. Dr. Marina Santos, a renowned neurologist whose fees represented a small fortune in themselves, was the first to identify something unusual. "The child possesses an extremely rare neurological sensitivity," she explained, after a series of non-invasive tests. "Her nervous system detects minimal chemical changes in the environment, including changes in body odor that precede symptoms of diseases." "Is that natural?" asked the businessman, holding the girl's small hand as she watched the medical equipment with cautious curiosity. "It's an extraordinarily rare genetic variation, probably hereditary. Did her parents work in some scientific field by any chance?" The question sparked fragmented memories in the child. "Mommy and Daddy were always in a place full of books and strange machines. They said they studied small things that we can't see." The millionaire felt a chill of recognition. Could it be the local university? The research department? Dr. Marina nodded thoughtfully. "If they were researchers, they may have left records about genetic studies. It's worth investigating." The search for the girl's parents' records led the businessman to a discovery that would change everything. In the university library, buried in little-accessed academic archives, he found dozens of scientific articles signed by a couple of biologists who had disappeared 5 years ago during a research expedition. But the real surprise came when he discovered a personal connection impossible to ignore. The documents revealed that his own adoptive parents, deceased 10 years ago, had worked in the same research department. More than that, they had collaborated directly in the studies on sensory genetic variations with the girl's biological parents. "They knew my parents?" asked the child when he shared the discovery with her in the office, while his son played in the corner of the room with new toys. "They knew and worked together," replied the millionaire, his voice trembling with the emotion of the revelation. "And there's more. Your parents left detailed instructions on how your special condition could be developed positively. The documents contained a treasure trove of information, specific exercises to refine the girl's sensitivity, techniques to control sensory overload, and mainly protocols to use her ability in a way that benefited others without harming her own health. During the following months, the transformation in everyone's life was gradual but profound. The girl learned to modulate her extraordinary sensitivity, managing to detect diseases in early stages without suffering from the constant anxiety that haunted her. The millionaire discovered that his true wealth was not in his financial investments or accumulated dividends, but in the unusual family that had formed. His adopted son, strengthened by the recovery and by the presence of the new sister, completely overcame the traumas of abandonment he carried. The three developed a strange but functional family routine: mornings studying at home with private tutors, afternoons at the restaurants where the girl exercised her detection skills, and nights telling stories and singing songs that she remembered from her biological parents. The biggest twist, however, came 6 months after the first meeting. During a review of old documents in his company, the millionaire discovered employee records that he had completely forgotten. Among them, a biologist named Joaquina Santos, who had worked temporarily in his restaurants 5 years ago, performing food quality analyses. "Joaquina Santos was your mother," he said to the girl, showing the hiring documents. "She worked for me for 3 months, shortly before leaving on the expedition from which she never returned." The discovery revealed the final connection. The girl's parents had accepted temporary jobs in his restaurants to finance their research expedition, the same trip from which they never returned. Unknowingly, the businessman had employed the parents of the child who would later save his life. "What happened to them on the expedition?" asked the girl, her voice small but brave. The millionaire hugged her affectionately. "The records say there was an accident in a remote area. They left doing what they loved, researching ways to help other people. But the story would not end in melancholy. A final discovery, hidden in the personal belongings that the girl's parents had left at the university, revealed something extraordinary. They had developed a complete protocol for training people with sensitivity similar to their daughters, transforming a rare condition into a revolutionary medical tool. They wanted to create a network of human detectors, explained Dr. Marina, examining the documents, people capable of identifying disease outbreaks before they spread. "Your daughter would be the first, but not the only one." The millionaire made a decision that would change not only their lives, but potentially thousands of others. Using a significant portion of his wealth, he established a research institute dedicated to developing and training people with sensory abilities similar to the girl's. "It won't be charity," he explained to her, respecting her characteristic pride. "It will be a real job, helping to save lives as you saved mine." The girl, now 5 years old and visibly healthier and more confident, smiled with a genuine happiness that lit up the entire office. "Can I teach other kids to do what I do?" "You can teach anyone who wants to learn," replied the businessman, realizing that he had finally found a greater purpose for all his accumulated wealth. A year after the first meeting in the park, the unusual family had been completely transformed. The millionaire discovered that being a real father was more rewarding than any business profit. His adopted son flourished in a house full of love and purpose, and the street urchin who once slept in cold alcoves now led a pioneering program that saved lives throughout the region. "You know," she said one night, as the three watched the stars from the balcony of their new home, "I think Mommy and Daddy would be proud. I'm using what they gave me to help other people, just like they did." The millionaire hugged her, feeling a peace that no investment in gold, Bitcoin, or stocks could ever provide. He had discovered that true fortune was not measured in dollars or net worth, but in the ability to transform pain into purpose and loneliness into family. And so, a girl who had survived on the streets using an extraordinary gift became the hope of an entire community, proving that sometimes the greatest riches come disguised as small, human miracles. If you liked this wonderful story, please comment and rate it from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important. And if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.